Hey everybody, it's Abishur Prakash, aka Mr. Geopolitics. Since May, tensions have been flaring between Cambodia and Thailand after a border skirmish killed a Cambodian soldier. Both sides have been preparing for a future conflict. Thailand closed major parts of its border with Cambodia. Thailand stopped the flow of tourists to Cambodia. Both sides have refused mediation until the other backs down. Now, a major fight has begun on the border between Cambodia and Thailand. Over 130,000 people have been evacuated. The drums of war are beating loud. Equally important is that this is the third war in 3 months. In May, India and Pakistan went to war. In June, Israel and Iran went to war. Now, at the end of July, the fight between Cambodia and Thailand has reached a dangerous point, and war looks like it's about to begin. This was all predictable. The conditions were in place. The fighting was on the horizon. Both sides were preparing for some kind of showdown. This comes with its own huge geopolitical shockwaves, which leads us to the unpredictable. When it comes to the unpredictable, there are four key areas to think about. The first is how exactly this war evolves. This is not a war between two equal nations. This is a war which has very similar dynamics to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. When Russia invaded Ukraine, it was considered the second or third most powerful military in the world. Ukraine, on the other hand, was considered the 55th most powerful military. This was not an equal battle. Similarly, Cambodia's GDP is $40 billion. Thailand's GDP is over $500 billion, more than 10 times Cambodia's economy. Thailand's military budget is over $5 billion. Cambodia's is at around $1 billion. So this is not a fight between two nations with equally sized economies, equally sized armed forces, equally sized military budgets. And therefore, depending on what happens next, this could very quickly become a kind of asymmetric war where the Thai military makes huge inroads at the border in other parts of Cambodia, and then Cambodia turns to more guerrilla warfare, more rogue tactics to strike back, whether it's through drones, whether it's through insurgencies, whether it's through other means. If this becomes a protracted war, then it will not be one where the Cambodian military is the only lever that Cambodia uses to fight against Thailand. This is not a war that Cambodia can sustain long term, which is equally important. This is a war that has an end date because Cambodia is not going to receive the kind of support that Ukraine did. Cambodia's economy is far smaller, and Cambodia's armed forces, around 120,000 active troops, is far smaller than Thailand's forces, which is around 360,000 active troops. That's the first most important aspect when it comes to unpredictability. Where will this war lead? What will this war look like? And it's asymmetric, and it's also not going to be a long-term fight. Second is China. China faces huge pressure to end this war. This is a huge test for China because this is taking place not just in China's immediate backyard, but in countries that China has been investing in serious ways. China is the largest foreign investor in both Thailand and Cambodia. Thailand and Cambodia are central to several of China's major BRI, Belt and Road Initiative projects. They're central to new connectivity corridors that China is building in these nations directly to China and also for the Southeast Asian region as a whole. China cannot afford to allow these economies to fight, to go to war in a way that deteriorates the economy. China now has to show, this is a huge test as to whether China can resolve a fight that's flaring right next to its border. Can China use diplomacy or use its economy, leverage its economy to end this fight as it stands right now before it becomes a full-blown war? And if China can't do that, then it will be a huge sign that China cannot play in the same league as major world powers. China lacks the ability to do things that others like the US seem to be able to do. Equally important for China is that it can't be seen to be picking sides. When the Russia-Ukraine war began, very quickly, a separate war began between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenia sought support from Russia. Russia refused to give Armenia the kind of support it needed. And the outcome is that Armenia is now turning towards the West because Armenia feels that Russia did not pick it over Ukraine. Similarly, if either Thailand or Cambodia feel that China has picked the other side, that China is aligning more with Thailand over Cambodia or more with Cambodia over Thailand, then the nation that feels left out may turn towards the US, may turn towards Japan, may turn towards India, which once again makes this a very global and regional and local at the same time. The dynamics of the region could change. Third has to do with Southeast Asia. What does Southeast Asia do? There is already this civil war in Myanmar that's been flaring for several years. Now, if Thailand and Cambodia begin fighting, then conflict will begin to define Southeast Asia as much as it's being defined by development and growth. And this puts the spotlight specifically on ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the regional bloc that has so far been focused on governance, on development, on identifying ways to coexist with the US and China to deal with issues like the South China Sea. Now, this fight between Thailand and Cambodia may be the biggest test as to whether ASEAN is ready to truly lead the region and whether regional blocs can play in the same league as global institutions. And speaking of blocs, another bloc that has a role to play, whether or not it decides to play a role is a different story, is BRICS. Thailand has become a partner nation of BRICS. BRICS now will be on the sidelines watching, similarly as BRICS was watching the Israel-Iran war, and BRICS did not take any action. BRICS simply watched and stayed mute. Will BRICS adopt a similar position when it comes to the Cambodia-Thailand conflict, which could become a war very quickly? So this draws in two key blocks, ASEAN and BRICS. BRICS once again has to decide whether it's going to step into the situation and try and use its power as a bloc and as member states of the bloc to bring calm and stability back. Can BRICS play a role? Can ASEAN play a role? And if neither of these blocs can play a role and are not able to bring resolution, then this will fundamentally change the perception of both of these groups. And the last big unpredictable aspect has to do with the United Nations, has to do with global governance as the world knows it. The UN is overseeing a world where wars are breaking out in quicker and quicker succession. As I said at the beginning of this video, this is the third conflict in 3 months. In May, it was India-Pakistan. In June, it was Israel-Iran. And now the end of July, it's Cambodia-Thailand. This is a dangerous sign that the safeguards and the guardrails and the ideas that have managed to stop wars from breaking out, the structures that have scared nations and deterred nations and stopped nations are failing, are being dismantled, have eroded to a point where governments are not afraid to throw a punch and get bloody. Powder kegs are exploding faster and faster. The time separating wars is shrinking. What was once years that separated wars has now become weeks. This is a dramatic, dangerous sign, direction the world is moving in. And if steps are not taken to address this, then another major war is not a question of if, but a question of when. And this is now the second war that has emerged in Asia in 90 days. First was India-Pakistan, now it's Cambodia-Thailand. And this indirectly puts the spotlight on Taiwan, China. And all of this puts a big question mark over the head of the United Nations. What does the future of the UN look like? Does the UN still call the shots? Do nations care about diplomacy within the halls of the UN? What is the explanation the United Nations gives to countries that are wondering why disputes, why skirmishes, why conflicts, why tensions are not able to be resolved, why the UN is not able to deal and stop these situations from spiraling out of control? This is one of the biggest dimensions that will not receive attention as the conflict, if the conflict between Cambodia and Thailand escalates, but it is one of the biggest consequences, because if nations, in this case Cambodia and Thailand, are prepared to go to war first and talk after, then what exactly does the UN do? What exactly is the role of the UN in such a geopolitical climate? I hope you resonated with this episode of Predictable versus Unpredictable. Leave your comments below and talk soon.